You know, this episode starts off with Spock talking about sex, and I was kind of like, do it, you cowards! Make Spock bisexual! Happy Pride! Hello, interwebs, and welcome to my review of the latest episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Episode 7, The Serene Squall. Couple things that I have to say right up front. First off, obviously, wearing a weird face mask right now. That's because I am currently still healing from surgery, and my vanity needs to be protected just a smidge because I look like a giant pufferfish right now. It's not a pretty sight underneath this mask, so you're dealing with this eldritch horror today. But the second thing is, I actually was intending to do this review as another one of my audio-only reviews that I've been doing for all the other shows, but I have to say, this episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds just got me so excited, so happy, so freaking joyous that I had to, hype up on painkillers and appear on camera to talk about this to all of you because this episode might be hands down easily one of my favorite episodes of modern Star Trek and hands down probably one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek ever made. It is just so freaking amazing. Now, I want to stay spoiler-free up front. We'll get into spoilers in the back, but let's stay spoiler-free first. Now, I want to be very, very clear here. I think the reason that I am in love with this episode so much is for a few reasons that are very particular to me. This episode, I think, is a great one overall for so many people. I think everyone is going to love this episode. But for me particularly, the things that this episode does they just hit me right in my sweet spot. It's hard to talk about it in our spoiler-free section up front because a lot of the things that I love this episode for are for the things that happen in the latter half, namely surrounding certain character reveals, a big reveal that happens at the end, and some of the interplay and just fun actions that the characters get to have. But truly, I have to tell you that all those things were just so freaking wonderful that I just absolutely adored it. But without ruining the fun of that, I will say this episode is just one of those that embraces the absolute weirdness and strangeness of Star Trek in its complete and utter totality. This episode was just sort of Pirates Take Over the Enterprise episode. This sort of embraces the weird 1960s vibe that this show sometimes has. I mean, we get Captain Pike doing literal, yar, pirate impressions. We get, mutinies, and we get, people overacting and just having a lot of fun. This episode just fully embraces the weird, especially for the big reveal at the end, we'll talk about it, but I am just so happy with this episode. Not the least of which for guest actress in this episode, Jessie James Keane, who is an actor from the TV show Queer as Folk, which I have not seen, but she absolutely kills it this episode. She's a trans actress, and she gets to play a very, multifaceted role, let's just say, and she just gets to have so much fun, and I can't talk about it without spoiling, but she is probably my favorite addition to this entire episode. That all being said, I am sitting here realizing that there's not much more that I can say about this episode, about what I really particularly love about it, without getting into spoilers. So what I will just wrap up my spoiler-free section on is, please go watch this episode. Know that it's a weird one. Know that it's one that is just reveling in the fun strangeness of Star Trek, but you will absolutely love it if you just give it that sort of breath. And I honestly, personally, for me, think this is one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek ever, and I love this show. I love this show. Star Trek Lower Decks is still probably my favorite modern Star Trek, but goddamn Strange New Worlds, you are coming in there hot and making me debate, because this show is just truly something so uniquely special, and this episode, to me, proves exactly why. That being said, spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead. Big freaking spoilers ahead. If you have not seen the episode, there is a spoiler that I'm going to say in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh my freaking god, Sybok is back. Sybok! 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 Oh my god, it's Sybok! It's Sybok! Honestly, jokes aside, I know this happens at the very end of the episode, but I have to talk about this first because it's just the thing that had me standing up and screaming and literally shaking my pillow and hitting things when I saw it, and why I have to be on camera about this, because I have been waiting for Sybok to appear in modern Star Trek ever since Michael Burnham was announced as the adoptive sister of Spock back in Star Trek Discovery. I was always upset that they never referenced Sybok, and now, not only are they referencing Sybok, they are building him up to be the big bad villain of at least this season, possibly longer, and I am so happy about it. I love it when Star Trek embraces the weirdness. Like, they're making Star Trek 5. Star Trek 5, essential viewing for Star Trek fans with this show. Of all the things they could do, this weird nonsense film, making it essential viewing, I'm just so happy about that. I know some people out there may be upset about it, being like, oh, that's so dumb. Why would you make Cybok this big thing? For me, though, I think it's just absolutely wonderful. But not only that, the reveal that Jesse James Keen is playing the captain of the Serene Squall, hyper, like, queer villain character that was just so over the top and just relishing in the joy of it. They not only brought Cybok back, but they gave him a trans queer-coded femme villain who is just over the top, and I freaking love it. I could not be happier with Star Trek. It just, it makes me so proud. Let's talk about this episode beat by beat, but I just had to get that off my chest. I know it's dumb. I know it's not going to be for everyone, but for me, this just has me so excited because it just shows me that Strange New Worlds is just embracing every aspect of Star Trek, from the serious, the gritty drama, the political messaging that we saw earlier on in the season, just to the downright strangeness that is Star Trek. And I just, honestly, I might make a whole video of it about this for my main channel, so maybe go check out that and I'll talk about it more, but I'm just so proud. This just makes me so happy. I know I'm a weirdo, but God, it makes me happy. I'm going to be honest with all of you, I'm going to try and do this review a little bit faster than normal with my breakdown, because just the Cybok energy just got me a lot, but realizing being on camera after surgery, I am kind of crashing a little bit hard, so I'm going to go through this and just talk about some of the things that really stuck out to me that I really loved about this episode. I'm absolutely loving the T'Pring actress. I loved her in the premiere episode and in Spock Amok, but here too, even though she's not here for a bunch, like every scene that she gives, she just is absolutely fantastic. And this opening sequence where you get to see her calling Spock and being like, we need to spice things up, I loved. I have a whole series on my main channel called Sex and Star Trek. New video coming out very, very soon in that series, by the way. But I've been kind of disappointed that, for the most part, live-action modern Star Trek has been fairly, like, kind of almost dead when it comes to sex. And so moments like this I thought were just kind of funny, very open, and I like that it leads Spock to talk to Nurse Chapel, who we already seen as like the queen of like one night stands in Spock Amok, and go and talk to her. And I like the building friendship between these two. Now clearly they're building up for explaining why Nurse Chapel has a thing for Spock, as we see throughout the episode. Here I love this just friendship that they're building, and Spock just sort of teasing her and playing with her and joking with her, but also earnestly asking her advice and her giving it and saying like, be open. Like, I love the line that Nurse Chapel gives, like, don't try to be smarter than the truth. Absolutely great advice and just really wonderful stuff. So their relationship, of all the characters that I thought they couldn't build upon, Nurse Chapel and Spock's relationship has become a cornerstone of this show for me so far, and I really love that opening sequence. But then from there we get a scene with Captain Pike and the sort of main bridge crew having a nice little dinner with Dr. Aspen. And I have to say, again, I already praised them earlier, but I do really like the fact that we get a non-binary actor playing a non-binary character, and we actually learn that the original Dr. Aspen, who this character was sort of replacing, was also a non-binary person as well. So I like that subtle representation there. But I also really like that we get like these mission briefings in the captain's quarters. He's like, we're just having a nice dinner, we're gonna chill out, we'll talk about the mission with this person who's coming on, and we sort of get the explanation here. And I think Dr. Aspen plays it really, really well. And I love that we get this sort of like very serene, like kind of chill person who's just like, oh, I'm just trying to protect the colonists and save people. You're gonna have to worry about this pirate ship. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine. It made for the turn later on in the episode just a complete 180. I did really enjoy that. Then when we come back from the break, we get Spock going to Dr. Aspen's quarters. He's playing club music outside. I loved that for them. And then their outfit that they're wearing, like, I haven't really talked about it much, but the fashion on the show, the civilian fashion that, like, Nurse Chapel and other characters of Ortega's as well have been wearing on the show, fan-freaking-tastic. Like, whoever the costume designer just for the, like, civilian wear, great. And Dr. Aspen is no exception here. I love her workout wear. It's wonderful. But I love this conversation. We already start to see Dr. Aspen manipulating Spock emotionally here, being like, oh, you should feel emotions. I know you do. You're not going through the Kolinar. We're getting reference to Kolinar from Star Trek The Motion Picture, the ritual that purges all emotion. Getting little references to that. That was all wonderful. I also really love the joke about Pike being the Boy Scout and him sort of balking at that. So I'm not the Boy Scout, and I think it was Una who said it was literally in your file. And I'm like, Of course it would be in his file. Absolutely adorable. And I like that he gets sort of like uppity about that and wanting to break that down later on in the episode. But it also again speaks to Dr. Aston just perfectly manipulating everyone's emotions. Then we get a fun little sequence that's very reminiscent of the Thullian web, with the Enterprise getting stuck in a sort of webbing net and Spock having to use his instinct to get out of it. I love that Spock sort of like had to choose, and Dr. Aston was sort of manipulating him here again. All really good stuff. The way that they handle the situation, try to think it out, and everyone's sort of like hitting beat by beat, just trying to be like, how do we do this? Do we do this? What's this? What's this? And everyone just sort of thinking out ways to do it. Just showed how competent everyone is. That was just a lot of fun. But then we get to the meat and potatoes of the episode, where we find this ship that initially the Enterprise crew thinks is a lost ship that they're trying to save, which it felt very Kobayashi Maru to me, by the way. Sort of entering non-Federation space to save a ship, and then getting trapped and attacked. Very Kobayashi Maru-esque. But then Pike, because he's been manipulated by Dr. Aspen into being like, oh, I want to feel like I'm not the Boy Scout, teleports over to the other ship. Very 23rd century. We know Picard wouldn't be doing that stuff, but it makes sense to me that Captain Pike would be doing it. Though I was almost like, did Una come with him? Because I thought Una came with him initially. I'm like, no, First Officer and Captain cannot both go on the away mission. Arguably the Captain, I would say probably he shouldn't, but this is Star Trek rules, we'll let it go. But not both of them. That would have been dumb. So I'm thankful that didn't happen, but obviously this is all a ruse, and Captain Pike and crew on the other ship get captured by the crew of, now we realize, the Serene Squall, the pirate ship, and then the Enterprise crew gets boarded, and people start hiding and running away. I love seeing the tube that Nurse Chapel hides in, by the way, when people come in. That is a classic set from Star Trek, the original series that they recreated, the sort of big tube that Scotty was always playing around in. That was a cool addition to the Star Trek Strange New World sets. Wonderful to see that. And we sort of split off here, so I'll focus on both sections of this episode separately. The Pike stuff over on the Serene Squall was a lot of fun. It was so clear right from the beginning that Pike was trying to manipulate this Orion captain. It was nice to see this Orion captain right from the start trying to get his crew to work against him. And I noticed it right from the start. I knew what Pike was doing. And I loved that he used cooking to try to get people to like band together and sort of like, look, I can cook you some food. And he just saw this scruffy Pike just cooking food for everybody. It was just wonderful. And again, setting people against each other. And one small thing that I noted that I really liked, that the Orion captain mentioned that he was going to sell the crew of the Enterprise into slavery. And this obviously becomes one of the sticking points with the crew of the Serene Squall, because they don't want to sell people into slavery. That's a bad thing. They don't like that. And that's sort of one of the things that Pike uses to drive a wedge. But one small little note about that I really loved is the person who was most notably upset about the fact that they were going to possibly sell the Enterprise crew into slavery was a black woman member of the crew. This is what I talk about when I talk about having people from an experience get to be part of the show and not just talking up to alien metaphor or letting anyone play it, because this casting was incredibly important, even if it was really subtle. Because of course, a black woman, a black human woman, would have a problem with selling people into slavery for very self-evident reasons. It didn't need to be stated why. It didn't need to be over-focused on. It didn't distract on the episode. It didn't stop the episode cold to be like, we're going to talk about black women and slavery now. But it was important to have someone from that background represent that point of view, even if it was just in the subtle casting of these pirate ship people. I just thought that was just a subtle thing. Previous Star Treks would have just cast anybody, it wouldn't have mattered, and it would just been like anybody could have done that. But here it adds a layer of subtext and just discussion to the episode that makes it deeper just by the casting. And so this is what I mean when you need to take thought in your casting of characters and stuff, and why I love modern Star Trek's much more inclusivity in just that aspect and who they cast for these characters. Absolutely wonderful. Subtle, small thing, but I needed to talk about it. But then I just love when Captain Pike gets put back into the cell. Everyone's sort of like, what happened? What's going on? And Pike being like, well, we're pulling I forget what the number was, like an Alpha 69. And they're like, no, you're not making a mutiny. And everyone's just like, oh God. And Ortega's being like, oh no, this is not going to go well. But then the manipulating that crew member who I was talking about before and being like, well, we have friends. We have some friends here. We can get you in. Pike and Una just being like, it works every time. And I loved Una's giggle when they realized it was going to work. And then at the end of the episode, the best part, the just ultimate payoff of all of this is once they get the mutiny in action, they come and rescue the Enterprise towards the end of the episode. And there's literally a pirate wheel. Pike has a pirate-like ship wheel. It was so wonderful and perfect and just so much fun. And I love the payoff for the joke that Ortegas is having the whole episode. Like, you go in with like a third date, go in like a blind date, and then Pike's like, shoot gently. And Ortega's like, how do you shoot gently? Wonderful little payoff there. That was just absolutely joyous. Sorry, everybody, if you didn't notice, I just stimmed for a minute there because I was just so excited about this episode. Welcome to being on the autistic spectrum where you just stim for a minute over excitement over Star Trek. Anyways, but I love the final bit of the episode after they rescue the Enterprise that Pike and the crew reveal that they're still in the middle of the mutiny. They're like, can you beam us out of here? The mutiny's still going on in the background. So much fun. Just absolutely wonderful. All that being said, this brings me back over to the Enterprise and the storyline going on there with Nurse Chapel, Dr. Aspen, and Spock. Because once the ship gets boarded and everyone gets taken away, Spock and Dr. Aspen try to rescue the crew. And all of this is just great stuff. Like I said, I'm getting kind of tired, so I'm just going to run through this. But Dr. Aspen manipulating Spock's emotions and being like, my husband was a Vulcan. I wish he had felt emotions at some point because it might have saved his life. Like, all this manipulation that they're doing is just so freaking good. And I realized that it was the same thing that Captain Pike was doing over on the Serene Squall halfway through this. I'm like, oh, Dr. Aspen is clearly the actual captain and is in on everything. Like, I picked up on it, and I liked that it was subtle, but they're doing the same thing that Pike was doing. And I thought that was just a brilliant connection, and it ties into Spock's journey about dealing with his emotion in Vulcan half this season. So all of that is just really good character development while also having fun, while also balancing and connecting both sides of this story. And I love that Nurse Chapel is also sort of in on this and sort of trying to help Spock and everybody. But the true joy of the episode, it kind of what I've been alluding to throughout all this, is just when Dr. Aspen gets revealed to be the actual villain, and they just go full ham camp queer villain mode, like just full ham villain. And it was just so fun to watch. They were clearly having a ton of freaking fun. Every scene that they're in from that point on was just delicious, just chewing the scenery. And I loved it. Like sitting in the captain's chair, playing and messing with T'Pring, because we ultimately learned that they're trying to rescue a certain Vulcan prisoner coming up here. And I was like, oh, please let that be Sybok. And I love that Spock manipulates T'Pring by kissing Nurse Chapel, which obviously confuses both Spock, Nurse Chapel, and T'Pring. It was honestly heartbreaking. Like, I knew that T'Pring could not have fallen for this fact that, like, Spock was clearly kissing Nurse Chapel, that it was all a ruse, that T'Pring kind of got what was going on, that Spock was doing this to try and get her to not turn over the prisoner. But it also read, like, you see the heartbreak because there is a truth in it for all of them. All of them are aware that there is a kernel of truth in all of this. And I appreciate that they were able to be over the top with it, but by going over the top, it actually found something true within all of them. And you feel the heartbreak at the end of the episode when Nurse Chapel's like, yeah, we're just friends. And I did not think they could ever make the Nurse Chapel pining after Spock storyline in Star Trek The Original Series good, actually. Like, it reads as so 1960s, like, oh, I need to fawn after Spock. But here in the show, they're actually making it worthwhile and actually adding depth to that relationship. And I just loved it. And you can really see the conflict between all of them. But then at the end of the episode where Spock and T'Pring meet up and they kiss, and T'Pring's like, paint me like one of your human girls. And they just make out and have sex. It was absolutely wonderful. But again, I've already ranted about this enough, so I won't say too much on it. But the reveal that Sybok was the person that Dr. Aspen was trying to save, I just died. I'm so excited to see where they're going with this storyline. Hopefully it pays off, because Sybok coming back into Star Trek and being the big bad villain with the trans queer girlfriend, I love it. So, I'm dying right now, so I love you all. This episode was fantastic. Might be one of my favorites. Definitely my favorite of this season so far. Might be one of my favorites of Star Trek in general. And I know that is particular to me, but I think everyone probably can agree this is a top-notch episode, even if it doesn't particularly resonate with you in the way that it did me. But I just loved it. I loved it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did you love this episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds? Let me know down in the comments below. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you, as always, my friends, live long and prosper. I'm going to go have more painkillers.